Okay, so moving right along, that was a great session and really interesting, and it's a very useful segue into the next conversation, which is going to be looking at a project that Kat's been working on together with all the panelists. I could please ask for the panelists to come onto the stage now. And we're talking about new investments. So another investment-focused panel addressing investment in Kenya and the Open Access Initiative. There's been some really lovely developments in the last few months that have gotten me particularly excited. But actually, I think everybody here on this panel, have we got everyone here? One more, I think. Great, I think we have everybody there. Hello. Welcome to Kigali. I'm speaking in a room.
Kyoy.
Is Kyoy not? Oh, Kyoy's not there. Where's Kyoy? There he is. He's
no,
coming.
Yeah, I've just been allowed to enter. Morning, everybody. Afternoon.
Hello.
Fine, thank you.
Welcome. Lovely to see you all. And as I was saying, welcome to Kigali, which is where we are for the 37th annual AUHF Conference, which this year we're holding in a hybrid format, which has been, I suppose, fairly existentially interesting, as I've been jumping between being live and being virtual and not quite knowing the difference between the two. But we've had so many good conversations, and I don't know if you caught the last one that's just finished about the CDC investment into diversity and the opportunity for investment in inner cities. And one of the key issues that came up out of that was about the availability of data, not just high-level data, but particularly around the quality and the scope and the nature of the investment. So that's what we're going to talk about today. And thank you, all of you, for joining me. I'd like to first, let's just start with a quick set of introductions. It's a big panel, and we have a short amount of time. Anne-Marie, would you like to introduce yourself first, please?
Great, Anne-Marie Chidzero, and I'm the Chief Investment Officer for FSD Africa Investments. We are part of the FSD Africa Group, which is funded by UK Aid, and we support change in the financial market using a sort of market systems approach. So acknowledging that it's not just capital that's needed, or it's not just capacity building that's needed to address market failures in the financial sector. We intervene trying to address a particular problem with capital, but also using technical assistance and capacity building, working with policymakers. And I will share with you a little bit more what we're doing in the housing market sector. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Anne-Marie. Alan, how about you? Please introduce yourself.
Thank you, Kesia. It's a true pleasure to be a part of this panel. Alan Mutuma, I head up transactions at Centum Real Estate. Centum Real Estate is the leading mixed-use developer in East Africa, and is a wholly owned subsidiary of perhaps the largest and oldest investment company in East Africa. We are currently invested in 3 sites. So we have 3 mixed-use development sites where we seek to build city-shifting developments of scale that comprise of commercial, retail, entertainment, and residential developments. So over the next 5 years, we are going to be developing about 4,000 residential units, both within our mixed-use developments and through joint ventures, and 70% of those housing units will be focused towards affordable housing. I also sit in the Research and Policy Committee of the REITs Association of Kenya, and that's RAK, which is an industry association that brings together different players in the real estate value chain to promote the growth of REITs within the Kenyan market. And I'm happy to be here today.
That's so great. Thank you so much, Alan. Kyoy, can you introduce yourself? Welcome.
Hi, good afternoon there. My name is Kyoy Wamba. I'm one of the co-MDs of IHS, International Housing Solutions. We are a real estate fund that is primarily focused on the delivery of affordable housing. We have been in the market for a while in Southern Africa, in South Africa, Namibia, and Botswana. And we are very fortunate to have been involved in the delivery of about 30,000 units. And what we do is that, first of all, our units here are also green. They are EDGE certified. And we are basically vertically integrated. We are involved in all aspects of the developments, from the initial site identification, the feasibility stages. We go through the development, the design, construction, and we also have a very big team that manages the property management. So it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you very much.
It's lovely to have you. Thank you. Chris, you're speaking to us from Cape Town.
Yes, afternoon everyone in Kigali and everywhere else. My name is Chris Garbers. I'm a data scientist at 71.4, and we've been partnering with CAF and Real for the last 2 years on the data agenda for African housing markets, where we've conducted a few data landscaping studies across the continent for 9 countries. And we are now at the kind of exciting stage where we identified, key data gaps in the housing data landscape across the continent and are engaging with the key custodians of data in the different countries to take that forward and to improve the landscape. So really excited to be here today.
Wonderful. And Ben, hello. You're coming from the north.
I am. Yeah, it's great to be here. I'm Ben Atkinson. I'm the Research, Evidence and Learning Manager at Real. Real is a UK-based innovator and investor in affordable housing in Africa and Asia. We're active across about 15 countries with a priority focus in Kenya, Uganda, Nigeria, Pakistan and India. And we have a track record of producing over 50,000 new and upgraded homes over the past 30 years. In Kenya, we're investing in multiple different partners. We've completed around 2,000 homes so far, with hundreds more in the pipeline. And though Real is an investor in affordable housing, this investment is only a means to our real objective, which is to make affordable housing markets work for the bottom 40% and to crowd other actors into these markets. Thank you.
Great, thank you so much. And also thanks to Real for sponsoring this conference as well. That's made a big difference to our ability to share all of this. It's really nice to be here with all of you because we interact with one another so regularly in different streams, and now we're pulling the story all together. But Anne-Marie, it started really with this particular part of the story started with FSD Africa Investments' question about what their affordable housing investment strategy should be. And I wonder if you might just describe that a little bit and talk about your strategy into investing in affordable housing, situated initially in Kenya. And yeah, tell us a little bit about that.
Great, thank you, Kessia. Again, I had to go back to, it was about 3 years ago when I really began this conversation with you when I had just joined FSD Africa Investment as the CIO, and just really being blown away by the huge demand for affordable housing and just not enough stock. And how are we going to address this, and what is the financial sector doing to really drive more capital into the sector, and really beginning to listen to investors and their concerns about investing in this space. In fact, I spent some time, Kioi, with your investors in your South Africa fund, and went around to some of the sites that you had developed. And one of the key concern was just the risk return profile in this sector. And yes, IHS had been able to crack that, but still it's not that easy. And so how do you drive more capital into the sector if you have that challenge of the risk return? And you need to have private capital if we are really going to make a dent in availability of affordable housing. And so that's kind of where the journey started, was really trying to learn what we could do, because we are able to invest in taking significant risk as long as we feel there's going to be a good outcome in terms of the impact. So we began the conversation with Kessia, as well as my colleagues in the capital markets team and FSD Kenya, because we sort of took Kenya as our our initial kind of case study, affordable housing being one of the Kenya government's key priorities. And we began this journey about trying to unpack the market failure in the Kenyan context. And without going into all the detail of that, I mean, we have hundreds and hundreds of slides, and I'm sure one day Kezia will make those available to the general public as part of the open source facility, the open access facility. But you know, what we felt was we were in a unique position as the FSD Africa group to address what we were seeing as complexity in this market. So it's not just about getting investment into affordable housing, but you have to address so many of the other things. How do you, you know, produce houses that are low cost? How are they accessible to the market that we care about? What are the issues around land tenure, getting title, getting licenses, just cost of production, you know, materials, having access to water, electricity, you know, have good green solutions. So it really required a group of people to come together to crack this. So we eventually agreed to collaborate. So FSDAI has now provided some risk capital, so equity into a fund in Kenya. But as part of that, what we're trying to do is kind of invest and learn. So with the participants in this particular fund, the investors in this fund, and the Center on Affordable Housing, begin to make available information into the market around a number of different areas, and Kessie can tell you a lot more about it, that will help one address the transparency issue, and I think we'll discuss this later during the course of this session, but just really give the market more information. And so what we're really trying to achieve is to demonstrate the risk return so that investors have better information, which they can make a decision on whether to invest in this space or not. So really unpacking that and making this data available. Secondly, demonstrating the models, you know, what models actually work. And hopefully, you know, by addressing a particular market segment, you can influence, as you go further down into the affordable housing space, you know, how to actually provide that supply and stock of affordable housing. And then just to put more equity into the market, and I think that was something that came out of the previous discussion, is that there's just not enough equity capital in the market just to do the offtake and the management of property. And so we were embarked on this venture. It's early days, and I think what we are hoping is that in a year's time, we'll have something more tangible to say around how this approach has actually made a difference in getting more finance into the affordable housing space. I think we've got a great group of people on this panel who will share their own experiences, and really we're just trying to influence the way the market responds to this huge demand.
So what you No, thank you. Thanks very much. So, I mean, what you've done is you've made an investment into a fund, and at the same time, you made an investment into us, into CAF.
Exactly. Yes.
And we're very grateful for that. Thank you. And what we're going to do with that is to track the progress of your investment and the findings, the data coming out of that investment, almost like catching the exhaust of this investment process and of the development process that emerges as a result of what you've invested, catching that data and then transforming it into usable outputs that then promote market development, which means that your investee needs to be happy to share. And sharing has always been a difficult thing to organize, especially ironically in the affordable housing sector, and I'm not entirely sure why. But Kyoy, maybe you could tell us about that. How do you feel about participating in an investment that came with this funny string attached that said, in addition, how do you feel about that process?
Well, firstly, thanks again. I think actually that whole the issue of open access is one of the ways that we are gonna be able to get closer to actually providing affordable housing to people out there. No single person can do it. No single investor can do it. No single developer can do it. But people need to join forces. People need to be educated and informed and empowered for them to be able to do it. People need to be empowered on how to raise capital, on where to go look for capital. They need to be empowered or get a better understanding about the process of the delivery of this. And I just feel that the whole open access initiative is the way to go. And it is the way we are going to get to where we need to get to. So we are very fortunate when you look back at our track record. As I said, we've been around for about 14, 15 years on the continent. We've had our ups and downs. We've had fantastic projects. We've struggled on some. And we've done projects in different countries. And real estate is a local business. So what happens in one country isn't necessarily what's going to happen in another country. But over time, we have been very fortunate to have, through our experiences, developed processes and gotten a better understanding of how the business is done. And for one to deliver a good, affordable housing unit, there are so many pieces in the puzzle that need to be put in place at the right time. And I think this is now where, from our experiences, we've been able to get a better understanding of this. And as a result, we are now able to share what we have learned to others so that they, in turn, may be able to do what we've been doing and hopefully even be able to produce more than us. So we are very supportive of the initiative, and working with you, especially Kesia, we believe that we will be able to actually get this done. Thank you.
No, that's wonderful. Thank you very much. And I think that the more funds and the more developers that participate, and then also financiers that start to participate in sharing this granular level data, and we're working quite hard. We'll get to that with Chris and Ben to talk about how the detail that we're getting into. But the more that participate, the easier it will be to share, because you'll have a breadth that you can engage with, and there can be an anonymity in that data. Alan, I wonder if you could come in, because you've expressed interest in the Open Access Initiative, both as Centum as well as the REITs Association of Kenya. I wonder if you could just comment on that and your particular interest in data and the work that you've been doing in this field.
Yeah, thanks, Casey. And perhaps the only panelist who is from a developer side. So the nuts and cracks of actually building and delivering houses, and even in me sharing my experiences, I'll be able to highlight why the Open Access Initiative is very important. Let me just begin by saying that the OAI will be important in creating value chain connections that we believe, from a developer perspective, will allow us to have better insights, resulting in superior decision making. Because presently in the real estate market, we don't have a repository for data that can aid in objectively observing or forecasting major market trends and shifts. So what you have is that developers and contractors are sort of flying blind in terms of industry shifts and what comes next, because there's been quite a bit of push on the affordable housing agenda, but in terms of the actual delivery of that particular agenda, the contractors and developers are trying to sort of figure it out. And I'll give an example of an observed market change that is happening currently within the residential space. At best, it's an untested hypothesis. And forgive me if I get slightly technical, because that's what we really do. So if I was to break down the delivery of residential units into the key buckets of the guys who are involved, there will be the developers and the contractors. And developers would ideally take market risk, and that's what Santa Maria majorly does. While the contractors would be there to take on delivery risk. So you have market risk on one side and delivery risk. Now, if you look at the last 10 years, the average cost of construction per square meter for a mid-market house within Nairobi has been about $500. So that's construction. and the selling price per square meter for the same unit has been around $1,300 per square meter. So that's on average. This translates to a 3x margin for the developer. But now, given the push of affordable housing, we've seen a significant compression in the selling price per square meter, because for you to be able to deliver affordable houses, you have to reduce that price point. And we are seeing it trending downwards to about $800 per square meter, depending on the developer. You can be able to push it to about $900 per square meter. And you know, our good friends at IHS are very notorious for pushing the price down when purchasing from developers. And on the construction side of things, things haven't changed as rapidly as the selling side of things. So the average construction cost perhaps has fallen down by $100 per square meter. So we're looking at about $400. So the margin has compressed from 3x to 2x over that period of time. And what we are seeing in the market is that contractors are becoming bolder to take on market risk and delivery risk, meaning that they can be able to construct for a lower price point, perhaps $300 per square meters, and deliver the unit to the market and sell it to the market at $800, the new compressed price point. And the examples, Savo Apartments, Element Properties, etc., for all intents and purposes, being half contractors and half developers. And the reason I highlight this example is what I have highlighted here is just an observation that we've made as a developer in the market. It does warrant us to have a market index where we can be able, from time to time, to be able to compare the kind of costs that we are facing. And as Anne-Marie, pointed towards the fact that this market is very opaque. It's really difficult to be able to get to the nuts and cracks of what builds up that construction cost per square meter. And what is the science behind pricing it at $800 per square meter in terms of a selling perspective. And honestly, it's going to be very difficult going forward if we are not able to clearly see what the build-up of those price points are. And even from a personal perspective, as Centum Real Estate, it will be difficult to try and convince my board that perhaps as a developer, we should create some contracting capabilities to be able to compete competitively if I don't have tangible data that I can be able to present to them and justify an investment in contracting as opposed to housing. And I think that's where the open access initiative comes in, because to be able to create a high level of transparency that we as potential competitors within the industry will be able to say, how is it looking? What is the market index? Are we above the market index? Are we below the market index? But as is, we are just blind and trying to figure out, how to try and optimize those costs and selling prices.
Yeah, no, I mean, I couldn't agree with you more. It's such an important thing. And, Chris, this is what we were looking for. We were looking for exactly the kind of data that Alan is describing when you were undertaking the data landscape for Kenya. And then also you split it into the different value chain aspects, right? So the data landscape looked at what are the different links of the value chain and the enabling environment, and so much we couldn't find. Perhaps you can just talk a little bit about that experience and how what the Open Access Initiative and the kind of data that Kyoy and that Alan will be making available, and hopefully other developers as well, if we can access that, what impact that will have.
Yes, definitely. So I think, when we embarked on this data landscaping exercise, we've come from our starting point was that every year we were delivering CAF was delivering the yearbook, and it relied, there's a lot of key sort of housing statistics in there, but it was always difficult to ensure standardization across countries and just finding it, right? The data is often sitting siloed, and you have to find it in some report hidden away. So the exercise of doing the data landscaping was to kind of just have a central repository of all of this. It maybe not sitting in a database, but you have a kind of a glossary or a library index to tell you where you can find these things. And what this served kind of two purposes was, on the one hand, it allowed us to see what information we can gather on the housing market. So we developed certain indicators to measure activity along the housing value chain, trying to see how many houses were built, how many people can afford a certain house. But then with that, also gauging the quality of the data and identifying areas that we just didn't know what was happening because the data didn't exist or it wasn't accessible. And we then, through this process, I think the two things that we two takeaways that was evident across the different countries we did, not just for Kenya, was that you had a very rich administrative data landscape, particularly in Kenya, also in Rwanda, that had real valuable data on housing production output, because you've had the development of these e-permitting systems. So you have a digital database where developers have to submit, a building permit application, occupancy permits, and so forth. And but this is not disseminated because the data isn't collected for the purpose of delivering market intelligence. It was to monitor kind of market activity from a regulator's perspective. On the same instance, you have another wonderful data that's being collected by developers themselves in monitoring in monitoring projects and measuring how that delivery is happening. But that doesn't get aggregated, so you can never get a picture for Nairobi as a whole. And what we're moving towards with the data agenda is on the open access initiative. Is the idea is that you have this kind of bottom-up approach where developer by developer you are collecting data in a standardized format, so that you ensure that processes get measured and in a similar kind of a base standard across developers, which talks to not just market development as a whole, but within the developer institution themselves as well. It assists on that journey of how you monitor your progress and how you curate that data and disseminate that. And on the other hand, we have engagements like one that we are working with the Center for Affordable Housing and FSD Kenya, where we're engaging with a key curator like the Kenya National Bureau of Statistics as a kind of a key public sector agent that can act as a custodian for data sets from a lot of different departments, right? So not just National Bureau of Statistics data, but also a hub for data from other ministries. And like I said, that there's a data maturation journey that you go on through this, where you have standardization and dissemination of insights and benchmarking that can go with that, because you can see what you're doing for instance, cost per square meter and what someone else is doing, and what is driving that difference. And at the same time, it also takes you away from certain sort of high level measures that we are relying on presently that are top down. Like one of the key data sets that we've relied on to have some indication on operating environment has been the ease of doing business indicators, but that wasn't tailored towards housing specifically. So having the open access initiative where developers are submitting data that speak to the same kind of processes and timelines that the ease of doing business indicators we're speaking to will now give you a chance to really have that residential housing specific perspective and building things up from the bottom, which means that you have a lot more versatility in what you can do with the data, as opposed to getting one data figure and all it can tell you is, so many houses were built, not per suburb or per typology. And I think that's what's really exciting about this. I think there is going to be a journey of making sure that that data is standardized and that people understand what they are submitting and also gathering what they need to submit, right? That's all. It's almost like developing an auditing process, or we now need to measure and be collating somewhere on our side as a developer, cost per square meter for all the different typologies or whatever, and it's going to be a real interaction between the open access initiative team and the developers that are part of it to find that middle ground about what works for both parties, because you don't also want to overburden people from a reporting perspective, which then it doesn't assist the end goal of which is delivering market intelligence into to make it better. I think that that's so I think that is kind of what we are working towards, and I think that the the Open Access Initiative really is speaking to a lot of key difficult data points that you aren't going to find anywhere. It's going to be processes, costs, prices, and I think incomes as well of end users. If you have that's another point that was made in the previous session, was around things like income elasticities, for of demand across the price range. There is just no good publicly available income data. If you go with the survey data, there's 500 households that can afford a house at market prices, but more than 500 houses are being sold. So the Open Access Initiative will give us a chance, I think, to be actually getting the granular micro data on what is the income of the household that is actually purchasing this house. What share of their income are they actually dedicating to buying this house? Is the 30% assumption valid? It doesn't seem like it's valid. Yeah, I think I'll leave it there for now.
Now we could go on because it is, and it's an issue of such frustration because we know things that we want to know better, and it's like we're in a fog, and slowly we're pulling the fog away from different places, and it's still not, the picture's not complete yet, but we're opening up wider the places that we can see through. Ben, I want to come to you about this because we've been working together on the data agenda initiative for now, 3 years with 71.4. This is an objective that's been central to Real strategy for a long time, and you're applying it also in your work in Asia. At the same time, you're also investing in specific developments, and your website has all of this data presented there. I've already put into the chat your MSI dashboard for Kenya so that listeners can go take a look at the data we collected. But perhaps you could just talk a little bit about that. What are your objectives? What are you trying to do? What do you see particularly for Kenya in this context?
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, as Kioi said, no single person or developer or investor can do this. Like, there's no single entity that can bridge these huge affordable housing deficits that we're seeing across all these countries. And that is a key message for Real. Though, as I said, Real is an investor, and the majority of our finance goes into investing into housing construction. That's not our end goal. That is a means to what we're trying to do. And what we're really wanting to do is make affordable housing markets work for the urban bottom 40% of the income pyramid, and to crowd in other actors into these markets. So we use our investments to generate data and evidence, and we use this along with data collected from the wider market to strengthen our own projects, to demonstrate commercial viability of affordable housing, and to advocate for change in the wider sector. In particular, we target our outputs towards government to increase focus on affordable housing, to create policy change, regulatory change, towards private sector actors to demonstrate that there is opportunity here, and towards investors to invest more money both into Real and into the wider sector as well. And yeah, a key part of this, as you say, has been the data landscaping work that we've undertaken with CAF and with 71.4. And I think this has been hugely informative for us, both for our projects and for our wider work. And we are now undertaking it in Pakistan and in India, and we'll have that data up on our dashboards over the next couple of months too, which is really exciting. But yeah, we are very passionate about making data open access. We think it plays a huge role in de-risking investments, in highlighting blockages and demonstrating viability. So yeah, you've highlighted the dashboard. All our data, wherever possible, is available on that across our projects, across the wider markets. All of that, where possible, is downloadable. We include sources so that people can interrogate that themselves too. And yeah, we believe that this strengthens the data. It enables others to interrogate it properly. It enables people to highlight weaknesses and to utilize it in ways that we would never have thought of doing so. It hugely increases confidence in our key arguments. We keep talking about there being a commercially viable market for the bottom 40%, but it's no good us just saying that. Like we need to be able to prove it. And you know, we're not there yet. We can prove parts of that. There is more still to do there. And I think this is where the Open Access Initiative really comes in. It really pulls together these separate strands of investment, of research, of advocacy, of the public sector side of the data and of the private sector side, and starts to really create this overall message, overall set of data, which really kind of demonstrates that we can do what we are saying we can do. So we're really excited by this. It feels like the culmination of a lot of work over the past few years, both with CAF 71.4 and in terms of what we've been doing ourselves too. And I think it has the potential to be really transformative. And yeah, we look forward to continue to help to drive this initiative forwards over the next few months and years.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks, Ben. And of course, the developers that you're working with in your work they're targeting different markets too. So we start to cover the breadth of the demand side, the bottom 40th percentile, maybe the middle 20% as well. And we start that breadth then gives us a sense of all of the different niche opportunities in this. And what you're saying, and it's something I'm coming back to you now, Anne-Marie, because if we can then prove the investment argument, we start to crowd in more investment. And then the fund that you're holding, which is a modest fund, I think I can say that, can start to, you're leveraging now, you'll be able to leverage a whole lot of other money that will come in on the basis of the arguments you've demonstrated.
Yeah, and I think, you know, what is for us very important is how do we crowd in local capital?
Exactly.
So, you know, the pension sector has huge pools of capital that we hope, you know, would be invested more. And I think there are some investments already into the affordable housing space. We'd like to see more of that. And the fact that, you know, if we have better transparency on the risk return profile, and this then enables us to potentially move towards REITs and to other structures that are more permanent, that can really continue to finance the sector. So again, this journey of investing and learning and generating data and communicating that data to the investment community. And you know, here I'm talking the diversity of that investment community. I think this is how we're going to kind of reduce the burden on the fiscus, on government, you know, as their responsibility to ensure affordable housing and really get more private capital flows into this market. And that's really the only way that we're going to be able to make a dent. I mean, it's a huge market and it's a huge need, and we got to figure out the formula to make it attractive for all types of investors.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And Alan, when we had our conversation, when you approached us around in the capacity of the REITs Association of Kenya, that was the argument that you were making as well, wasn't it? And that in order to promote the growth of these new vehicles within the affordable housing space, we need to have a whole lot more that we can say for certain.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, part of us reaching out was to be able to form those types of collaborations. And you know, CAF as a partner or as a potential partner for the REITs Association of Kenya was identified because of this open access initiative that you had in mind. Because really the next phase of growth for the real estate market, when I look at it from a developer's perspective, is the consolidation phase, where you want to attract, as Anne-Marie has alluded to, the institutional capital that comes in. And from where I sit, I think this is really going to be important to try and reduce the cost of purchasing a home. Because in the earlier session, I had CDC, you know, alluded to the fact that they want to try and set up tenant purchase schemes as their preferred investment channel within the affordable housing space. And for you to be able to do that, you need equity, which is, you know, a much longer outlook investment channel, as opposed to the current debt that is flooding into the real estate market. So for REITs, that's the kind, for the REITs Association of Kenya, at least we are trying to, pull that long-term capital. And the only way you can do that is to be able to, make the industry more transparent. And more importantly, with data, I think you can be able to change the mindsets, because I think it's also a mindset issue that needs to be done to these, gatekeepers of long-term capital, for them to be able to understand the industry better. Because the problem of information asymmetry is that it makes everybody shun away from being able to participate in a market. But the more information you shed in that particular sector, the more understanding the pension funds and insurance companies are able to get about that sector, and perhaps then be able to crowd in that long-term capital within that space.
So then what ends up happening is you in your role as Centum, and then Kyoy, you in your role as IHS and working with all the developers, your participation in this as a byproduct perhaps of the funding that you receive is in fact an investment on your part in the potential for future funding, because you're building the argument and you're building the case that will be showcased to a wider investment community, and that should then grow your capacity to grow further.
Absolutely. And just piggybacking on what Alan is saying, fundamentally what the issue about providing data and information in an industry, it fundamentally reduces the risk. It's the biggest issue. And the more information that is out there, the more manageable the risks will be, the more we'll be able to understand what we need to do to mitigate those risks. So it is very fundamental, and it has a very, very big impact on that. And as you've said, this is the way to go on that.
No, absolutely. And what we've got then is a situation where we're aligning incentives in a really, that's what I find so exciting about the Open Access Initiative, is that like, I don't have to beg anymore. It's like, it's not just about asking, please, will you share your data? But like, it makes sense. It makes business sense to do it. The real proof though, Chris, is we got to make it work, and we got to make it smooth. Hey. So we need good systems, and the standardization issue that you raised is so important. In my mind, I have this idea also, the doing business indicators, a bit of a loss, because we've been relying on those up until now. But as we've said to one another before, a little bit miffed historically that those were about commercial property and not residential. So we've got a real chance now to actually change the landscape of housing data available. Possibly even globally, Ben, with the way with your taking this information and these approaches into your work in Asia, specifically for affordable housing to crowd more investment in. Yeah, well, thank you, everyone. Thank you so much for participating in this discussion. We've come to the end of our session. I suspect this is a conversation that will carry on, and I'm looking forward to when we start to talk about, well, look what we found, and the things that we make that we want to put into the market, the blockages that we can start to unblock, because we've got evidence about the impact that those blockages are having. So I'd just like to thank all of you for not only participating in this panel, but in the journey. It really is, I think, going to make a big difference in the market. And we're starting at least we're starting right now to raise a lot of eyebrows. And there's some good enthusiasm about joining into this.
Let's hope that this time next year we'll have some great achievements to announce at a panel like this.
Absolutely, absolutely. We'll definitely do that. Thanks, Anne-Marie. Any last minute comments? Okay. Good. Well, thank you very much, and look forward to talking to each of you again very soon. All the best.
Thanks again, everybody. Thank you.